So thank you all for, oh, and I see also salt, pepper, and chili. So thank you everybody for being here today in week number 3 for plant families in our foods. We'll get started momentarily. It's just a reminder to folks that this is just for fun and for learning. And gosh, and I lost my train of thought. It's a reminder to folks that don't be afraid of making mistakes. I made one on Monday during class actually, and it was really awesome. It made me really happy. And one of the other participants helped me realize my mistake. And so even as you learn more plants, like even if you call yourself a botanist, it's still okay to make mistakes. And so I don't want people to get too stressed out over that. The only mistake I recommend people don't make is never eat the plants in the wild, especially with the family we're about to have today, just because a lot of members of this family have lookalikes that are poisonous. And so it's just going to be really important to not eat any plant that you don't explicitly know what it is, especially in the wild. And with that, so welcome back to Plant Families in Our Foods and Nature Journaling, week number 3. As usual, we'll start out with 3 pictures, and then we will take 2 minutes to draw what we can. Again, don't worry about being perfect. Just draw what you can. Sometimes it can be helpful to draw only a part of what you see if the whole is too overwhelming. And after our 2 minutes, we'll take an extra minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures. So 2 minutes starting now. So about 15 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. Now we can take an extra minute to add any words, describing words, observations, questions it reminds me of, and numbers to our pictures starting now. About 10 more seconds. And there's our minute. So we'll go on to our sample picture number 2. And once again, we'll take 2 minutes to sketch what we can, starting now. About 15 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. And now we'll take an extra minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures, starting now. Another 10 seconds. And there's our minute. And now for our third and final picture. And once again, we will take 2 minutes to sketch what we can, starting now. 10 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. And now we'll take 1 final minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures, starting now. Another 15 seconds. And there's our minute. How's everyone doing? Good. I see some nods. Okay. Are you all ready to meet our family of the day? Welcome to the celery family, also known as the Apiaceae or Apiaceae. It is named for the celery genus Apium. And I'm not sure if there is a connection. I thought I remember reading once that there was, but I know that Apium is I think it's Latin for either celery or parsley. And then there's also apis or apis for bee. And I'm not sure if the two are explicitly related or not. I thought I read somewhere that they are, but I think it's appropriate anyway that they have this connection because pollinators love this family, absolutely love this family. So when I hear Apiaceae, I think like apiary for bees, because bees really truly do love this, but they're not the only ones. Sometimes it can be fun to find a member of this family and sit and try to catalog just how many insects will visit it. So this is a really good family for that. As usual, I like to include the old name just because I think that the old name can be really indicative. And so the old name is Umbelliferae. And that is because we have these lovely flowers here that look a little bit like umbrellas of flowers. It's a kind of flower arrangement on a plant that we call umbel. And so we call this Umbelliferae, not just because they have umbels, but this family has umbels of umbels. This family, a lot of its patterns are compound everything. Compound umbels, compound leaves, you'll see. And so just one of these would be an umbel. But as you see, it's not just one, it's several coming off of the same stem. But we'll get more into that vocabulary in just a bit. Before I continue onwards, does anybody know what this plant is right here? Might be a little hard to see without the stems. This is celery. This is celery flowers. I actually just found this picture yesterday, or rather I saw this plant yesterday in the garden and I couldn't help but take a photo. So this is celery, what it looks like once it's flowered. Does anybody know, here, one second. Does anybody know this one right here?
That's hemlock.
That it is. You're absolutely right. This is poison hemlock. And I included it. Usually I wouldn't include one that's so far away. Usually I try to include up close pictures, but this one I deliberately did because it's poison hemlock. This is the one that you really never want to eat, and preferably not touch either. A way that you can identify this is that in a lot of cases, although sometimes it depends on how much sunlight it gets, it has these red splotches on the stems. And we call it the blood of Socrates, even though Socrates didn't bleed to death. But Socrates was forced to ingest an infusion of poison hemlock as punishment for so-called corrupting the Athenian youth. That was his death sentence. So this plant is a killer. You don't want to eat it. Also, it smells really bad, so I'm not sure why anybody would eat it, but I'm told that you can mistake this one for wild carrots and some others. So you don't want to ever ingest this one. Also, a thing I'll mention before we continue on is a lot of members of this family have phototoxicity, which means that if you're touching it or exposed to it, especially during a particularly sunny day, you might get a bit of a rash on your hands. A bunch of family members have that characteristic. So you want to be careful with these and careful with handling them. So this is our poison hemlock. Does anybody know this one? It's a trick question. Anybody? It's also poison hemlock. Sorry, I did it twice. I liked it that much. I mean, I don't really, okay, liking it is maybe, I consider that plant to be a frenemy. And this time I swear I'm not going to rant about poison hemlock for the entire hour, but I pull up this plant a lot. So and plus it's the one that tried to kill me on Earth Day. So, you know, we have a friendship sort of. So yeah, this is poison hemlock again. And does anybody know this one? This one is one that you can eat. Any guesses?
Fennel?
It is. You're right. It is fennel. That was Kate who guessed it. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was fennel. So this is lovely little plant. And what's funny about this one is that you can see, like, I've watched this plant in the garden, and I've seen some really interesting insects on it that I would never have expected. Who here knows yellow jackets as being kind of bad tempered, will fight you for your meat, will sting you without any, hesitation or remorse? Well, actually, it's fun. I've seen yellow jackets visiting these flowers as well, which I would never have expected of them. And it made me kind of see them in a different light. So you can find yellow jackets here peacefully going through these. You can find hoverflies. You can find bumblebees. You can find honeybees. Plus, a thing that I've learned about yellow jackets is that they're actually pretty caring of their young. If they're fighting you for your meat, they're trying to get it so that they can take it to their young. If they're trying to fight you for your ice cream, it's because they want it for themselves. But if they're fighting you for your meat, it's just because they want to feed their kids. So yay for yellow jackets sometimes. So yeah, this is our fennel. This is our poison hemlock close up. This is poison hemlock from far away. And now that everybody's drawn it, I hope it will make it easier to identify in the field. And this is our celery. Before we continue, are there any questions so far? No, that's okay. Just so you know, I won't be able to see everybody. So you can unmute yourself if you have a question, and I'll try to check the chat regularly, or Jasmine can let me know if anybody writes in the chat. But if you raise your hand, there's a chance I will not see you. So I'm not trying to intentionally ignore anybody. I just wanted to make sure I said that. So here we go. So like usual, oh, okay, I guess I left that there. That's okay. Like usual, this is our anatomy of our flower. I always like to start off with the same basic one, and then we can see how our family of the week differs a little bit. So this is one you might see in a textbook, except the pistil may not be as big as the one I drew here. And, it just might be a better drawing than I did, whatever. This is our stem. This is our sepal. The sepals are the little leaf-like appendages that are beneath our petals. Although they're not actual leaves, they're modified leaves. Here are our petals, which I think I've heard somewhere are also modified leaves. But anyways, petals. We have our stamens here that make our pollen, and our pistils here that make our seeds. So I remember that with PSSP. Pistils make seeds, stamens make pollen. PSSP. And our anatomy or diagram of our plant this week is here. So we have what's called an inferior ovary. And I promise it's not to make the plants feel badly about themselves. That's rude. I wouldn't do that to a plant. What it means by this, and we'll review this again in a future class, is that the ovary is positioned beneath the sepals. Usually in our flower diagrams, we see the sepals first, but in this case, the ovary is beneath the sepals. So that's why we call it a so-called inferior ovary. And we can scold the botanists and reassure the plants that it doesn't take anything away from how wonderful they are. We also have 5 sepals. A lot of times they're really, really tiny and well hidden. So it might be a little hard to see them. We have our 5 petals. Not every one will curl like this, but a lot of them can kind of curl a little bit. So I drew it that way. Some of them will be flat. Some of them, like our, what is it called? Our cilantro will be weird and will be, you'll have maybe 3 or 4 petals on the outside that are big and then some on the middle that aren't. So that one's a weird anomaly, our cilantro, where the petals are not uniform, but in most cases, they're going to be more or less uniform sized. We have our 5 stamens, and we have 2 united carpels, which is another way of saying 2 pistils. And you know that it has 2 pistils because in this one, you're able to see let's see here, the style and stigma kind of sticking up, and you see 2 of them. If you remember back to that picture of the poison hemlock, then you might remember, in fact, I'm going to just rewind that really fast. You might remember that we had these 2 kind of globs in the middle, like 2 marshmallows stuck together. So that's a sign that it has 2 pistils here. So I just wanted to include that as well. So looking for the 2 kind of marshmallow look. And not all of them will be as blatant as that one, but I thought that it's good to mention it anyway. Before I continue, are there any questions so far? I want to make sure I don't miss any questions.
I don't think I see any in the chat right now.
Okay, cool. Do folks need another second to draw the diagram, or shall I move on to our next slide? I'll give folks a couple more seconds. Another thing that we'll be talking about more is I mentioned compound, and I mentioned compound inflorescence or flowers, and also compound leaves. So we'll be talking about that in a second too, about what that means with this family. And here, we'll talk about it now. So here's our extra vocabulary here. When we talk about umbels, we're talking about an arrangement where we have a stem and then we have a bunch of flowers on that stem, but the flowers each have their own separate miniature little stem. And usually the stems are about the same length. Usually, not always, but usually. So that's what an umbel, and you can think of it sort of like an umbrella of flowers. That's how I like to think of it. And if we have an umbel of umbels, then that means that instead of having a stem that leads to a bunch of little flowers, we have a stem that leads to more stems that leads to bunches of little flowers. So that's what we mean by when we say compound umbel. And so that's what our family has here. We have what I call umbels of umbels, although the family's not very humble, but anyway. Then we also have our leaves. And a lot of times I notice this family has compound leaves and also pinnately compound, but that's not always the case. So this is what a pinnate leaf looks like, where it has, this entire thing counts as being a leaf. And so pinnate leaf is when you have one main central stem and then tiny little leaves or leaflets coming off of it. And so this is our pinnate leaf, but it's once pinnate. Twice pinnate would be sort of like with the compound umbels, where you have a stem, but instead of the leaflets coming off, you have a stem that's followed by more stems, that's followed by leaflets. And our plant does not always necessarily stop at having bipinnately compound leaves. I've counted with some that they're up to quadrupinnately compound in this family. So it's not always, there's not a definite pattern about how many times it's pinnately compound, but it's good to know that a lot of times you'll see them having this kind of feathery fern-like look. So this is, yeah, our bipinnately compound leaves. Are there any questions so far? Then yeah, that's okay. Let's see here. Did folks need another second to draw this? Yeah, okay. I'll give folks another moment to draw this. And so in this case, with our bipinnate leaf. Again, this entire thing counts as being one leaf with a bunch of little leaflets on it. But this entire thing is considered one leaf.
Avea, I'm seeing a question from Leah. It says, are pinnate leaves always opposite each other?
Ooh, I like that question. I am not sure. I feel like the answer might be no, that sometimes they might be alternate or slightly just off, but I would recommend observing it whenever you come across a pinnate leaf and seeing. And I will do the same. I will also observe it because I could be paying a bit more attention, I think. Also, bipinnate leaves don't always necessarily end in two here at the tip. This is something I notice sometimes in Fabaceae, but within our family of the week, it often will have one final tip here that comes, so it will be sort of an odd number of leaflets kind of branching off, or an odd number of, yeah. Anyway, so this isn't necessarily true for this family. Sometimes it will be like that at the end. Any other questions? No, that's okay. Here, and we'll go on to our next bit, which is our characteristics of Apiaceae. As we talked about, we have our compound umbels. We have a bunch of small flowers, so always really small flowers, that have 5 small sepals, 5 petals, 5 stamens, and pistil with 2 united carpels, where you can see 2 styles sticking up. And carpel's a word that I sometimes hear in place of pistil. I have to admit that I'm still trying to figure out the difference. I've been trying to figure out for a while now. But I get the sense that carpel is when you have chambers or more than one of the pistil. So all you really need to know is that there's 2 and that they look like they're smooshed together. We often have multipinnately compound leaves, which means it can be twice or thrice or 4 times compound, which leads to a feathery look. And because this is nature we're talking about here, and nature has a sense of humor, right? I believe it's important to always let the plant that's in front of you tell you, and figure out, even if it's not going to be this family, try to ask yourself why it makes it feel like this family to you. And sometimes just being able to narrow down the characteristics that make you think this family will help you to identify it at a later date, no matter what it is. So I always recommend thinking, why does this remind me of this? Also, the bracts, not as important. There's not always these, but if anybody was in Jack's class during the Queen Anne's lace talk, then you might have heard us talking about involucres and involucelles. And that's pretty much fancy words for bracts and bracts. And I'll rant about bracts in a future class. I even know which one. But what these are is that these are kind of the middle step between our sepals up here and our flowers, and then our leaves down here. So they're also leaf-like, also modified leaves. And what they do is they subtend, or they encompass, or they subtend an inflorescence or a group of flowers. So sepals are for the individual flowers, and bracts are for an entire group of flowers, usually. So that's why we have our bracts here. You don't have to worry about the words involucre or involucelle. They're both different words for bracts because botanists be crazy. So, so there's a bit more about our plant. And I think next we get to look inside a little bit. It's a little challenging to see inside of it because this plant was ridiculously difficult to cut in terms of the flowers, because the flowers are so tiny. But this is what it looks like on the inside. And this is a poison hemlock flower because I'm crazy. And you might be able to see these 2 little things sticking up in here like bunny ears. Those are the styles. So just again to show the blobs, the two pistils kind of stuck together. So you can tell by the 2 styles that there are 2 of them. And I'm not sure if there's more than 1 chamber down here. I'm not sure if each pistil has more than 1 chamber, so that's something that I've been meaning to check out more. But you can see, and you can see how the ovary is beneath. Are really hard to see sepals in here. And then also, this is just a nice up close picture of our fennel, just because it's fun to kind of look at the blobs and see them. I think it's pretty. And so now I'd love to hear from all of you. And please, you can unmute and call out. What foods do you think are in Apiaceae?
Celery,
Celery,
carrots,
carrots,
Broccoli?
sorry, what was that?
Broccoli.
Not broccoli, but that's a good guess. That's a good guess. What else?
Mustard?
Not mustard, although that's also a good guess.
Curry.
What was that?
Curry.
Curry. Some of the ingredients in curry are.
I thought there was one like specific like curry flower that it was named for, or like curry plant.
You're right. There is a curry plant, and I actually don't remember which family
I
that
remember
was.
where I saw it, but I was like, I think it had like a bunch of little flowers, so I could be wrong, but.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I forgot about the curry plant. Thank you. And I don't remember which family that's in. So now you've given me something exciting to go find out after this. So I'm not sure if the curry one is in here, but you might be right. So that's really cool. I'm going to have to look that up too. What else? Oh, I see.
Asparagus?
Not asparagus, but I'm seeing dill and parsnip right on both of those. And if we're talking about curry as a combination, there's a whole bunch of different spices within that do belong to this family. I'm going to write myself a note to check out about the curry plant though, because I like that's a new plant for me to learn. I'm excited. Are you all ready to find out?
Yes.
All right, here we go. So here are just a few of the ones. And I feel like I've forgotten some, but here are the main ones. So we've got our celery, we've got our carrots. Oh yeah, another fun thing about celery is I believe the word in Spanish is apio, but I could be wrong, which is another connection to Apiaceae. So we have our celery, we have our carrots, we have parsley and fennel, we have cumin and cilantro. I think cilantro and coriander can be called the same, although there's a different plant entirely called culantro, which is also in this family that I didn't put here. There's chervil and anise, dill and caraway and parsnip. So a bunch of ones. And I loved that so many of you mentioned some of these earlier on when we were talking about what our favorite spices are. So it was fun seeing how many spices are in this family from what y'all said. So these are some of the ones that are in the family, and I'm pretty sure that there's some I'm missing. So here are some. Are there any questions before we go on to the fun part? No? Okay. Who wants to play spot the, if it goes, is it not going to go? Go. Okay, spot the Apiaceae. Woohoo! Thank you, Jasmine. So again, don't worry too much about having to do everything right or perfect. This is about learning and practice. I think that's the most important thing, is that if we get a plant, then we question why we think it's this family. I think what's most important is to be able to think about why we think, why we identify things a certain way. So don't worry too much about right or wrong answers. Just use this as an opportunity to explore. Not to mention that, like I mentioned before, nature is tricksy. In fact, question number 3 is going to be a trick question. Cool. So I think most folks have voted. I'll give folks another 5 seconds in case they want to. Y'all ready for the answer? Yeah? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. And wait, did it show? Yep, it did. Okay, good. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to see. So we have carrot over here. Now, what told people that carrot was our Apiaceae?
The stem and the leaves.
The stem and the leaves.
I was looking at how the flowers were grouped, how they're all in one big circle, and then like,
Yeah,
the umbel.
that's that too. Because this one in B doesn't look like the shape that I saw before.
Yep. Yep, that's a great way of telling it, is that it's all one big clump, but then you can see the individual little umbels within that. Exactly. What else? Oh, I'm seeing some, looks like there might be some stuff. Yep. Umbels with tiny flowers. Yep. What told people, okay, so here's a question. What tells people that this is not Apiaceae? Or alternatively, what does it have in common with Apiaceae?
The leaves is different from Apiaceae.
Mhm.
The way the flowers are grouped, they're not in like little radial bursts, they're in like a vertical column.
Yeah, that
Yep.
too.
They are. That's true. They're in little vertical columns. Coming off of it almost, yeah. And yes, the leaves are, I think they're
They're
entire.
kind of like long ones. So
Yep. And then what tells people that this is not Apiaceae?
the leaves is also, I think, they're big. Oh, was that like
Oh,
beside of that?
this
Oh,
is
the flowers actually is the collection of the flowers doesn't look like umbels.
plus this might be my fault for being misleading. This is actually another plant. This is strawberries.
Yes.
But yeah, even though a lot of these flowers are clumped together, they're not quite the umbels or the umbels of umbels that we're used to seeing. It might be a little bit hard to see from a distance, but does anybody recognize this flower or this family?
I've seen, I know it's used as a ground cover, like everywhere in California.
It is, and it has a sweet smell. Yep, I see Kathy is saying sweet, is saying alyssum, and Celia is saying sweet William. Yeah, this is I call it sweet alyssum, but this is from our earlier family, the Brassicaceae.
Oh,
Hard to see though, because it's really far away. But yeah, if we were to look closer, we'd be able to see our 4 petals, although it looks sort of like an H shape rather than a cross. Are y'all ready for round 2? I think, yeah, I'm seeing, oh yeah, I see some. Okay, here we go. Round 2. And thank you, Jasmine. And again, this is just practice. I think almost everybody has voted. I'll give another 5 seconds if anybody else wants to. And are y'all ready? I see that everybody who answered got the exact same answer. So our answer is B. B for birch herbal.
oh, that's good.
Everybody got this one. This one, I'm not sure if this is the same one that we eat. I'm thinking it's not. This is one that I pull up a lot in the Presidio. And these lovely little seed pods in here that are just beginning to form, they have these kind of rough and itchy seeds that stick to your clothing, or fruits, I should say. They stick to your clothing,
Yes,
and they can stick to dog
burrs.
fur. And I think that's a pretty awesome way of spreading themselves around, is to stick to something and then hitch a ride and get far, far away. But I've heard of friends complaining that it ruins their socks. So
It's kind of annoying to have burrs on your clothes. They scratch too. So
they itch a lot. So what told people that this one was our Apiaceae?
the umbels and the leaves and the stem. Look at those stems.
The way that they branch off, yeah.
Yeah.
You're a crazy girl, Mom. Crazy girl. Crazy girl.
Which crazy girl? Oh, 5 symmetry flower. Yep. And
Also, like if you like process of elimination, this one doesn't look like the A doesn't look like it because of the formation of the leaves and how the flowers look, and then the C's leaves are not tiny.
Yeah. C has entire leaves as opposed to pinnate leaves.
Oh.
Are there other clues that people have noticed that say that A and C are not from Apiaceae? But when I'm seeing what Millian says about bracts as well.
I think A looks like a is that garlic chives or some sort of thing in the onion chive family, which I know the leaves do not match. And is it an umbral?
I've been told that it's called that. I've been told that it's called that, but I can't. But you're absolutely right. It is an allium. It is from the onions and chives and garlic. I can't remember which one it is, but you're absolutely right that that's what this
Looks
is.
pretty garlic chivey to me, but I could be wrong.
It probably was. I can't remember.
Everyone has a bunch of them in their garden. If you have too many of the flowers, one thing you do, and it's a little sidetrack, but everyone's gone right now. So put them in some vinegar with some like sugar and a little hot water and make like a vinegar with them for salads. Very tasty.
Ooh. Wait, so okay, so I'm gonna write this down. So take
Garlic chive flowers, and then like you know how you'd make like an easy pickle.
ooh,
Basically, you can just make like a nice little vinegar, and it's pink, so it's really pretty. Just add a little sugar, a little salt, pepper, to season a little bit. But I just have a ton of them in my garden, so it's like I need to find something to do with these. So now they're salad dressing.
that's awesome. Thank you, Kate. You can bet I'm going to be trying that. That's awesome.
Plus, they look so pretty in their jar in the fridge because you leave the flowers in there. Anyways, hope you enjoy that.
I will. I'm excited. Thank you. I've been looking for a good vinegar recipe to eat with my cucumbers. So this is perfect.
Ooh, yes.
So this is indeed an allium. Or if you took series 2 with me, it's from Amaryllidaceae. But that I'm going to be redoing a bit of season 2 or series 2 because I feel like I didn't do a great job on that particular class. And then this one, does anybody know what this one is? What number C is? Oh, I see that Celia knows it. C is indeed Cape Ivy, another one I like to rant about all the time. My other BFF that I like to pull up all the time in the Presidio, except that this one has a powerful smell as well. Its name is even Delaria odorata, but it doesn't try to kill me the way that the hemlock does. So I like it a little bit better. No offense to the hemlock. So yeah, those are these. Are y'all ready for round number 3? Final round. And I apologize in advance. This one's kind of a tricky one. And here we go. Round 3.
Oh, this one's hard.
Yep, if this one is challenging, it's because it was meant to be, because nature is tricky. And that's why I included this, because nature tried to trick me when I first saw this plant.
Oh, wait. Okay. Let's try.
Remember, this is all practice. Don't worry about necessarily getting it right or not. Again, we're just thinking about why we think a certain thing. And again, as mentioned, this is an example of nature being tricky. And that's why I included it. So just do your best. Make your best guess. Think about why you're guessing what you're guessing. I'll give folks another 10 seconds to vote. Meanwhile, I'm going to just watch Cindy's adorable cat. Such a cute cat. I love the cats. All right, are you all ready to see the answer? Yeah? Okay, here we go. Oh, what? Sorry. Did it appear? Did the answer? Okay, yeah, it did. good, sorry, I can't always see. Yeah, so our answer was A, the cilantro, which is why at the beginning of class I mentioned that cilantro had abnormal petals that weren't all uniform, is because I wanted to at least give. And I love that Melian chose A because of the pollinator. That was another clue. This is a hoverfly of some kind that is on top. So that's one big clue right there, is that there's a pollinator on it. What else told people that cilantro, or that rather that A might have been the one?
Mostly you telling us about cilantro, because I was looking at C and going like, okay, that fits a lot of it, but I didn't have the two united carpum.
Yep.
You know what I mean. And then the C bowls look slightly off. And B, it just like it had the 5, but also once again the united carpum. And then A was totally weird looking, but once you like did the math, it all kind of lined up. Plus, once you had said the whole thing about cilantro being weird, that's got to be it.
Yep. Sometimes process of elimination can work best too, is looking at the other two and thinking about why they don't specifically. And so what told people that B here was not Apiaceae? In addition to the two, and in addition to lacking the two carpels that are stuck together. What else told people?
Ooh.
In the chat, I'm seeing people saying too many petals, 6 petals.
Okay, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that. This is another one where I actually have to go back and figure out, because I thought that I had taken this picture off of something from Apiaceae, but this particular one member, this one has 6 petals on it. You're absolutely right. But then I'm thinking that the others might have 5, and it's difficult to tell. And this is another example of nature being tricky. But you're absolutely right. This one does have 6 petals on it. So that is one big clue. Another one is, I'm thinking that these might be the anthers, but it's weird the way that they stick up like this. That's different. Just having that in there like that. And it's hard to see this leaf too, but this leaf happens to be a fleshy, what is it called? I'm forgetting the name, succulent leaf. What told people that C over here is not Apiaceae?
Mainly the leaves, and like I can't see any of the carpels
Yep, we don't.
that you described before.
Yep, like both Ira and Kate mentioned, we don't see the united carpels in here. Also, we have this weird kind of thing where we have petals here, and I'm not entirely sure what this deal is up here. This is when I actually have to go back and look at a bunch more. This one, in common with our Apiaceae, does have umbels, but not necessarily, maybe umbels of umbels, it's hard to really tell. But the leaves, like Ira said, the leaves are a huge clue here, because the leaves are not pinnately compound. Does anybody know what this plant is?
No.
I see a guess for butterfly bush. It does look kind of similar, doesn't it? It's not a butterfly bush, but it does attract butterflies. So butterfly bush is a really good guess because of the nature of this plant to butterflies. Milkweed. Yep, you got it. This is milkweed. So yeah, this is from, I think this one is now from the Apiaceae family. It used to be from Aschlepiadaceae, but then the botanists played musical plants. And so I think that this is from Apiaceae right now, the sort of windmill petal family, for whatever reason. So yeah, those are our last ones. This one I kind of want to look at a bit more, because I keep on, like, I can't tell how many petals are on our one in here. It looks like there's more than 5, but it's hard to tell. Anyways, cilantro's weird. And if anybody else gets any good, I don't know, studyings of cilantro and want to let me know what they found, I'd really appreciate it. And I can understand why people thought it was C, especially with the umbels on it. Yeah, here we go. I think that was all for our game today. With our characteristics as a recap, we have our compound umbels, our umbels of umbels. We have our small flowers with 5 hard to see sepals, our 5 petals, usually, unless cilantro's a weirdo. Our 5 stamens in here, and our 2 united carpels that look like sort of marshmallows being glommed together a lot of times. Although again, cilantro's a weirdo. And are often multipinnately compound leaves. And also, again, to remind folks, the photosensitivity. With this plant family in particular, it's extremely important not to eat the wild members of this family. Some of them are edible. A lot of them are poisonous. Some of them have it so that parts are edible and other parts are poisonous. And others have it that you have to prepare it before it's not poisonous. And to make matters worse, this particular family has a lot of names that are misleading. I think there, for example, is one that's called like water parsley or something. And I think that one might be toxic, but I'm not sure. There's also water hemlock and cow parsnip and a bunch of ones with a lot of really different names. And that doesn't necessarily indicate that they're edible. So just a reminder to folks to be really careful with this family encountering it in the wild. And I think that that's it for this. Did anybody have any questions or want to share any experiences you might have had with this family?
I have a question. So can the flowers of this family be any color?
Oh, I like that question. From what I've seen, they tend to be mostly either white or yellow. Sometimes the white will have a tinge of that magenta in it, sort of the same. Yeah, sometimes white will have a tinge of magenta. I admit this family looms pretty big in my head, but I feel like I actually haven't gotten to see that big of a variety of them. So there might be other colors, but the ones I've observed so far tend to only be those 2.
Okay, thanks.
I like that question. What else? Are there any other questions?
Vea, I had a question about the bird chervil. Okay, so the bird chervil it looked like a pink and purple stem. It reminded me of poison hemlock. So I was wondering, how do you differentiate between the 2?
Oh, I like that question. Okay, so let me see. I will answer that just a second. There's something that I need to get to show how I differentiate. There's a particular prop I need. There it is right there. It's a little difficult to explain, but I'll do my best. Hold on. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, this is hard to explain, but here are a couple of prints that I took of the 2 of them side by side.
Oh,
just
wow.
for that exact purpose. So this one in here is the birch chervil. And so one thing I've noticed is that the leaflets tend to be a little bit more fine and also a bit more rounded when I see them. They're more rounded, they look cuter, I guess you could call them. The hemlock tends to be a lot more pointy. Also, the hemlock will oftentimes grow the leaves are also a bit, I guess you could say, almost thicker because more of the space in between the leaflets are thicker and they fill in the space a little bit more, whereas there's more space in between each of the leaflets within the birch chervil. The other thing is that, well, I think birch chervil can have a slight smell. It doesn't have the same stench that poison hemlock does. And with the birch chervil, I see the magenta kind of going down the leaves, down the stems in more strips, whereas the hemlock looks a lot more like splotches. In fact, that's kind of a fun thing about the name. Its Latin name is Conium maculatum. And that last part there, maculatum, is significant because if you think of the word immaculate, which means without spots or without any sort of blemishes on it, it's the opposite, maculatum, meaning it's kind of splotched all over. And so this one doesn't tend to have it looking like splotches, or it doesn't look like this is going to sound messed up, but the birch chervil doesn't look like a murder scene occurred on it, whereas the hemlock kind of does. So there's just, I can also show folks really fast, if you're interested, I can show you a picture of poison hemlock leaf that I have. I was trying to learn how to draw these a while ago because they're annoying to draw. people might have heard me ranting about this before in my craziness. Ah, gosh darn it. No, I am ranting about poison hemlock. I promised I wouldn't, and I broke that promise. I apologize.
Do it. We want to hear it.
Oh, that plant. Okay, in a second, I'm going to tell you all a story that some of you might already know, but this is poison hemlock leaf right here. And so you see that the leaflets are really, really fleshed out. They almost look like they could be miniature Christmas trees when I try to draw them. So they're really fleshed out like this. And I wish that I had a picture of birch chervil to show you. But the birch chervil is significantly thinner, so it doesn't look as pointy here at the tips. It'll be rounded and kind of cute, and it'll go kind of like out a little bit and then in, but then it will have a lot more space in between the leaflets, whereas the leaflets here don't really lend each other very much space. But I really love this question, and I want to find, you know what, sometime check my Instagram. I'm going to find specifically pictures of both of them so I can put them both up so that we can see that. So I appreciate that question, Jasmine. And okay, I'm going to rant about poison hemlock for 1 second, just because it's kind of funny, except not. So on Earth Day, this last year, I'd gone to my restoration site. Some of you might have heard the story, and I didn't get time to pick up trash because I was busy pulling up plants. And one of the plants I had to pull up that day was poison hemlock, which was very stubborn. And I had moved around from one site to another. And then I had sat down after a while getting tired and decided to have a drink of water. So I drank the water, but before I swallowed, I noticed that there's a weird taste and I spat it out. I looked at my water bottle. Let's see here. Yeah, that day I had a water bottle like this. And so I'd opened it up and there was a little bit of hemlock leaf that had gotten stuck right where the lid is. And so the plant tried to kill me on Earth Day. And luckily I spat it out. I didn't die. I was a little paranoid that I was going to die, but I didn't. And I have some respect for that plant because it tried to kill me. So yeah, but you never want to eat that stuff. So that's my rant. Oh, also, when I'm pulling it out, especially with the sunlight, it almost feels like it has this powder that gets into the air, although it's not something that you can easily see, but I get dizzy when I'm pulling it out. I don't know whether it's the poison in it or whether it's the strong smell or whether it's just me, I don't know, overreacting. I don't really think it is, though, come to think on it. But when I'm pulling it out for too long, I can get dizzy and fall over. So you got to be really careful when you're dealing with some of these plants from that family. Just to remind people, even if you're not touching it actively, just being around them enough. So yeah.
Excuse me, I see a question from Melianne. It says, is Carduus, I think is the name in English, part of this family? It has thorns.
Ooh, that isn't, but we're going to get to that family. I think you're talking about thistle, I think, right? And so the thistle, well, okay, spoiler alert, thistle's a sunflower too. Later on, we're going to be getting to the Apiaceae family. And when we do, you're going to see them everywhere afterwards because everything's a sunflower. You go out into the field and the first thing you ask is, which plants out here are not a sunflower? But we're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, the Carduus is a sunflower, not an Apiaceae. But I like that question a lot, Lilian.